Welcome to Hauntcore Vault. If you are ready for horror tales, you are in the right place. If you are new, please subscribe to the channel. I'd love to know where are you from and what time you are watching. Let's begin.
Female 20 years old, started an OnlyFans account over the summer to support myself through school, and things were great until I posted my Amazon wish list. Amazon doesn't release your address to people who gift you items, but third-party sellers can, and that's where I went wrong. Not trying to promote it here. This is a very frightening story, and I felt like it should be shared. In late July, I got a puppy. One night around 2 a.m., I took him outside to go to the bathroom. While he was doing his business, I noticed a car parked outside my family home. I saw a figure in the car and could tell they were looking at me, but I couldn't make out their face because it was pitch black outside. Feeling a bit uneasy, I picked up my puppy to take him back inside, and when I started to move, the car parked in my driveway. I sprinted back inside and locked the door, but they never approached my house. The next morning, I went to check the mail. There was an envelope addressed to my OF name with $20 in it, but no note. I was currently still at home with my parents, who had no idea about my OF account, so I didn't mention it to them. A week later, I moved back to my college town to get ready to start school. At this time, I had stopped posting for the time being until I could figure out how they got my address. I've watched enough crime shows to know there's a possibility I could be in danger. I live in a duplex with a gated parking lot for reference. One morning, I was planning on vlogging my trip to Target because I was planning on starting a YouTube channel in the near future since OF felt unsafe. When I got to my car, it had been ransacked and my vlogging camera was missing. I know it's my fault for leaving it in my car, but I was using it the night before, and since I live in a gated area, I didn't think I would be unsafe. It wasn't in plain sight either. I had hidden it in my glove box. I used that camera to film my content, and the SD card that was in there had all of my unreleased photos and videos. I know they stole it just for the SD card. Anyways, this is where the story gets weird. There are cameras outside in the parking lot, so we were able to watch this person break into my car and find the camera, and they didn't touch any of the other 7 cars on the lot. They knew which car was mine, which suggests they had been watching me for a bit. After they got the camera, they walked around the duplex until stopping near my window. My bedroom faces an outside street, and my blinds are broken, so it's very easy to see in. I have a curtain, but it doesn't cover my window all the way. This person watched me sleep for an hour or so. I have no idea why they didn't try to break in, but thank God they didn't. This person then sold the camera to a pawn shop, and since I knew the serial number, the police were able to find it. However, my SD card was missing. I believe the police are still trying to track them down, but I have broken my lease and moved to a new place, so hopefully that will keep me safe. Hey guy who terrorized me at my home and apartment and stole my camera, let's not meet.
My wife, 27F, was convinced a few months ago by a friend of hers that starting an OnlyFans and selling content of herself was a good idea. She approached me about this idea and told me that she wanted to do it to try and work on her self-confidence, become more open to doing new things in the bedroom, and possibly make some extra money on the side. She even went as far as trying to reassure me that she wouldn't do anything too explicit and that this would be a good thing because her friend does it and her boyfriend approves. I immediately told her that it wasn't a good idea and that I don't want her doing it at all. I made it clear that the thought of my wife flirting and sending pictures of herself to strangers for money made me incredibly uncomfortable, and all she had to do if she wanted to bring up new things in the bedroom is to ask. She got upset when I said I didn't want her doing it, but after that, I thought that was the end of it. Fast forward to today, when I stumble on accounts she made for her OnlyFans persona on at least 2 social media sites, with links to her page and even some pics posted as advertised. She was asleep when I found these accounts, so I haven't confronted her yet, but it goes without saying that seeing these accounts made my heart sink. I told her blatantly that I wasn't comfortable with my partner selling herself online, but she still went and made the accounts and got all this stuff to play into her persona. I'm sick to my stomach, and I can't process the full extent of what I've stumbled upon. There's no telling what kind of stuff she's already said or sent to complete strangers behind my back, and I don't know how to approach this situation. If she does suddenly start being more adventurous in the bedroom with new lingerie or role-play ideas, I won't be able to silence the thought that she did it for some random stranger online before even considering it with me. I don't think I can look at my wife the same after this if it's allowed to go on. If she's willing to go this far after knowing my feelings, who knows what else she could be willing to do behind my back?
I want to tell you about something I've carried for far too long. To the outside world, it might have looked like I was living the dream, making money on OnlyFans, independent, free. But behind that paywall, behind the smiling photos and carefully crafted videos, I was trapped. What looked like choice was really control. What looked like empowerment was, for me, a prison. For almost 2 years, I lived in silence, terrified to tell anyone what was happening. The man I trusted, someone who was supposed to love me, became my jailer. He told me what to post, what to wear, what to say. Every time I resisted, he reminded me of the money we were making, reminded me that I owed him, reminded me that no one would believe me if I tried to get away. Bit by bit, he cut me off from my friends and family until I felt completely alone. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, wishing I could disappear. Days when I stared into the camera lens, smiling on the outside, while inside I was breaking. I felt like a puppet, my body no longer mine, my choices no longer mine. And the cruelest part? To the world, I looked successful. People envied me, not knowing I was drowning. Leaving was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I remember the day I finally walked out of his house. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the doorknob. My heart felt like it might burst out of my chest, but I knew if I stayed, I'd never survive. Not in body, not in spirit. That moment, stepping into the unknown, was the bravest thing I've ever done. Even now, I don't think I'll ever be fully healed. The scars run deep. There are triggers I can't explain, songs, smells, even certain words that take me right back to those nights of isolation and fear. Sometimes I wake up in a cold sweat, hearing his voice telling me I belong to him, that I was nothing without him. And yet, what hurts most is how easily platforms like OnlyFans allowed this to happen. Behind their paywall, anything could be hidden. No one saw the truth of what was going on. To them, I was just another creator, another subscriber count, another transaction. But I was a person, a victim, and I was screaming for help in silence. I later learned that there were others like me, women who had been groomed, pressured, manipulated, even trafficked. Some were as young as children, hidden behind usernames with words like baby or Lolita. And still, the content went unchecked. The account stayed up, the money kept flowing. How many of us were there? How many still are? When I finally spoke out, I thought people would understand, but too often I was judged instead. Why didn't you just leave? They asked. Or worse,
Didn't you choose this? The truth is, I didn't choose. My choices were taken from me, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but obedience. That's what abuse looks like. It doesn't happen all at once. It builds slowly, wrapping around you until escape feels impossible. What people don't see is that the trauma doesn't end when you walk away. I carry it with me, in the stares from neighbors who whisper behind my back, in the distance from family members who don't understand, in the memories I can't erase. But I'm still here. I survived. And that's why I'm telling my story, because this isn't just about me. It's about all of us who were silenced, hidden, and exploited while the world looked away. Platforms, payment processors, lawmakers, they all had chances to step in, to stop this, and too often they failed. And when they failed, we paid the price. I want people to know the truth. What seems glamorous on the outside can be hell on the inside. Not every OnlyFans story is one of freedom. For some of us, it was captivity. For some of us, it was torment. And for too many, it still is. I don't share this for pity. I share it because silence protects abusers, because platforms need to be held accountable, because survivors need to be believed, not blamed, and because somewhere out there, another woman is living the life I barely escaped, and she needs to know she's not alone. Healing is slow. Some days it feels impossible, but telling my story is one step, reclaiming my voice is one step, and if my words can shine even a small light into this darkness, maybe someone else will find the courage to open their own door and walk out into freedom.
I am not proud of that fact. If I could go back in time and stop myself when I first started acting like one, I would, in a heartbeat. But I was a horny little goblin back then, and just the tiniest bit of attention from a woman was enough to fry my brain. In my defense, though, she was absolutely gorgeous. Brown eyes that twinkled mischievously, plump, kissable red lips that parted to reveal white teeth like perfect little sugar cubes, and thick, dark hair that gently tickled her shoulder blades. Her dresses clung to her like they couldn't get enough of her body, and I understood why. She had just the right amount of curves in just the right places. I wanted to sink my teeth into them, just scrumptious. I couldn't believe when she smiled at me. Jaw dropped open like a drawbridge, I stared at her from my seat in the cafe, wondering when the dream would end. It didn't. Not even when she got up and click-clacked over to me, her heels making her hips sway hypnotically. She slipped into the chair in front of me and asked whether I was staring at her. Dear God, her voice. It was like she was pouring nectar into my ears. I shook my head like an idiot. She laughed, and it was music, like birds singing an ode to the falling leaves on an autumn morning. Cute, she said, and bit her bottom lip. And that was that. One meeting, and she had me wrapped around her fingers. To say that our relationship was a whirlwind romance would be an understatement. It all feels like a blur to me, like the view inside a train that is zooming past yours in the opposite direction. I had no idea how she so quickly wriggled her way into my life, settling in like she had always belonged there. I felt like God himself was smiling down on me, and not one to spit on my blessings, I agreed with whatever she suggested, unknowingly losing myself in her piece by piece. I changed my dressing sense for her, dropped my childhood friends like the dead weight that they were, quit playing video games because it is a child's hobby, not something a grown man in his mid-20s should ever waste his time with. I sold off my G.I. Joe collection, got a job I hated, bought a car that was too expensive, and took out a loan for a house much bigger than we could have possibly needed, and added her name to the fucking deed. All to please the pert little succubus. At least the sex was heavenly. So heavenly, in fact, that I didn't even protest much when she told me she was going to start an OnlyFans account. "It'll be good for us," she said, flashing her slender wrists at me, making my heart melt. "We need the money, babe. Besides, they only get to look. Only you can touch me." I sighed, loosened my tie, and grunted. "Just don't tell me what you post on there. I don't want to know." She squealed with joy and jumped on my lap, reminding me why I was putting up with all this shit in the first place. That's when things started to go wrong. Terribly. Horrifyingly wrong. I would wake up from nightmares I could never remember, more exhausted than I had been when I crashed into bed that would get soaked to the wood with my sweat. I began sleeping longer but had absolutely no energy during the day. My skin was losing its color, my eyes had dark circles deep like gorges, and my hands would tremble with weakness. At first I chalked it all up to stress. I was overworked, without friends, stuck in a superficial relationship, and burdened with staggering financial obligations. Of course my body was finally starting to give out. I wasn't a machine after all, was I? But then the bruises started to appear. On my hands, thighs, back, knees, elbows. My body was being dotted with these little red marks that would inexplicably appear each morning, and they would hurt like the bite of a fire ant. She had no clue what was causing this, but I did. It all began with that damn OnlyFans account, and I knew I was going to get my answers there. I quickly set up an account and subscribed to hers, but to my utter disappointment, there was nothing out of the ordinary there. Just lingerie pictures, a couple of full-body nudes. That's it. Nothing that would explain what I was going through. This was because she had another account, under a pseudonym, one that she never told me about. Thank God for my connections in the IT sector. I was only able to track it down thanks to them. As soon as my phone buzzed with the message telling me about her alt account, I ran into the bathroom at the office and locked myself in the first empty stall. I wiped the sweat off my hands and unlocked my phone. With shaky thumbs, I made the payment and got access to her account, and what I saw made my head spin in fear. It was just the most bizarre collection of pictures. Animal skulls mounted on some sort of a greasy altar, candles arranged around a strange chalk diagram on the floor of our basement, grainy photos of rotting carcasses of dogs with their entrails ripped out and laid in a circle around them, close-up pictures of accident victims in their cars, limbs cut off, flesh burnt black, skin melting off, eyes crushed to a viscous jelly. How the fuck were these photos up? How did she even get them? Why had the folks over at OnlyFans not deleted them? I could feel bile rise up in my throat as I scrolled past those pictures, and the comments to those pictures were just as confusing. Strange symbols and squiggly lines that I had never seen on a fucking keyboard made up the comments. All of them. Hundreds of comments, all in what seemed to be a completely new language. But what terrified me the most were the videos. A primal terror clutched at my chest as I watched those videos. Unlike the pictures, she starred in each and every one of them. As did I. Some of them were innocent enough. They'd start with her holding the camera and pointing it at her face. She would bring it closer and closer to her mouth until her blood-red lips were almost touching the lens, and then she'd start whispering. I plugged in my earphones and turned the volume up to the max to hear what she's saying, but it was utter nonsense. I couldn't make heads or tails of it. It sounded like no language I had ever heard, yet scared the shit out of me. It was like she was running her tongue around inside my ears, threatening to condemn me to a fate worse than death. She would then walk and come stand over my sleeping form. The video would now speed up, and she would stand over me for hours, for fucking hours. As I tossed and turned, tormented by my nightmares, she would stand over me, pointing the camera down on my face. I took a second to calm my heartbeat, which thumped against my chest, my ears, and my temple before moving on. Another video. This time, the camera was set up on a tripod next to my bed. She was there again,
hunched over my sleeping form. But this time, she didn't just watch. She bent over, splayed my forearm out, and drove a little needle into it, quickly licking the drops of blood that bubbled out before turning and grinning at the camera, the greenish night vision making her eyes gleam. I gasped and almost dropped the phone. There were so many of these videos. Her injuring me, licking the blood off, and then grinning at the camera, literally hundreds of them, all with the same script. And then I moved on to the most recent video. The screen flickered to life, and our basement came into view. It didn't look anything like I was familiar with. Lit up by candles that bathed the room in a dull orange glow, the entire basement had been turned into some sort of an altar, like the pictures I had earlier seen. Unclean cattle skulls were strewn across the room. The floor was slathered with squiggly chalk lines set up in strange symbols. Tapestries with dizzying designs embroidered on them hung from the rafters, and smoke arose from somewhere off-screen. In the middle of it all, though, was the love of my life. Nude, with her entire body soaked in blood, she was writhing on the floor, touching herself and moaning in a hoarse and guttural voice. Propped up on a small table in front of her was a framed picture of me, with the eyes burnt off, probably with a cigarette. The fear that crashed into me brought tears to my eyes. She began rubbing herself faster and faster and faster and faster and faster until her hand was just a red blur on the screen. Sharp shadows danced on her face as she began speaking. "Soon," she said. "Soon. Soon, 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 soon. Soon, 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 soon. Soon." Her voice rose with each word until she was screaming in a manic frenzy, until the words reverberated like gunshots in the basement. And then the video came to an abrupt end. I blinked furiously to clear my rapidly fading vision, trying to wrest control of my body from the terror that threatened to shut it down. And then my phone buzzed again, and I almost had a heart attack when I saw the message. "Hey babe, when are you coming home tonight?"
I still remember the moment I stepped off the plane in Dubai. The heat hit me first. It was heavy, clinging to my skin, even in the middle of the night. The city glittered with lights, towers stretching so high they seemed unreal. To me, it was supposed to be an adventure, a party, maybe a chance to meet the right people, open new doors. I was only 20. I was curious, excited, maybe a little naive. But I had no way of knowing that night would be the beginning of a nightmare that would nearly kill me. The men seemed friendly at first, rich, charming, the kind of people who act like they can give you the world. They invited me to a penthouse, high above the city. Music pulsed through the walls, glasses clinked, everyone laughing like it was some endless celebration. For a while I laughed too. I wanted to believe I was safe. I wanted to believe they saw me as a person, not as property. But things shifted. Subtle at first. One of them leaned close and told me his father could fly me to Thailand on a private jet. My heart skipped. Was this opportunity or danger? I wasn't sure. Then they started to notice I wasn't drinking much. "Why aren't you drinking?" one asked, his tone sharper now. I brushed it off, but they pressed harder. Their words turned ugly. "You belong to us," one of them sneered. "We do what we want." That's when I knew. I wasn't a guest anymore. I was prey. The night blurred into something I can barely retell. Bottles smashed. I remember the sound of glass exploding across the floor, tiny shards catching the light. My passport was taken. My phone, too. Even my clothes. Piece by piece, they stripped me of everything that made me independent. I felt myself shrinking,
becoming smaller, powerless. They laughed while I tried to mask the terror in my chest. I thought, if I stay, I'll never get out alive. So I ran. I don't even know where I found the courage. The city outside was endless, suffocating, but at least it wasn't them. I hid in an unfinished building. Dusty concrete floors, jagged steel rods sticking out of walls, the air so dry it burned my lungs. I pressed myself against the cold surface, praying they wouldn't find me. Hours felt like years. I remember the echo of footsteps in the distance, my breath caught, frozen. Maybe they'll walk past. Maybe I'll survive this. But they didn't. They found me. The beating was brutal. Fists, kicks, every blow stealing more of me away. I curled into myself, hoping if I made my body small enough, the pain might stop. Then came the moment I still relive in nightmares. They dragged me to a ledge. I saw the drop, the darkness below, the sharp emptiness waiting. One shove, then silence. When I woke, I was on the side of a road, broken, my spine shattered, bones in my legs and arms twisted in ways they weren't meant to bend. Blood dried on my skin. The world was spinning. I tried to scream, but my voice was gone. I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. My body felt like it wasn't mine anymore. It was just pain. Endless pain. The police came, but instead of protection, I got excuses. They said I'd fallen, that I was suicidal, that I had no choice but to accept their version of the story. My truth was erased as quickly as the CCTV footage that might have proved it. Imagine surviving hell only to be told it never happened, that your suffering was just an accident. But I know what happened, and so does my mother. When she came to me, I saw the horror in her eyes. I was lying in a hospital bed in Dubai, tubes running in and out of my body, machines beeping steadily, the only proof I was alive. She held my hand and whispered, "You're safe now." But I wasn't safe. Not in that city. Not with those men still walking free. The surgeries were endless. Screws in my spine, plates in my arms, needles, stitches, painkillers that barely dulled the agony. I had to relearn how to live in this body that no longer felt like mine. Even now, in Norway, where I'm continuing treatment, I struggle. I move in a wheelchair, sometimes on crutches. I still can't speak the way I want. Some days, even breathing feels like a fight. People ask me why I didn't just leave earlier, why I didn't scream louder. They don't understand. Abuse doesn't announce itself. It creeps in. It traps you in fear so tight you forget what freedom even feels like. And when you do try to escape, it punishes you. That's what happened to me. The part that cuts deepest is how easily I was silenced, how the official story erased my suffering. They want to say, I chose this, that I fell, that I was just another girl who made a mistake. But I am not a mistake. I am not a story to be covered up. I am a person who was broken, brutalized, and left to dead. And yet, I survived.